Never take the last bus to Victoria Peak if you're alone. That's what the older drivers whisper when the depot goes quiet and the fog begins to climb the mountain like a slow, deliberate tide. At 00:10, the number 15 pulls out with more mist than passengers, its headlights carving tunnels through the white. Some nights, there's only the driver, a single dozing tourist, and the city shrinking to a necklace of lights below. Other nights, there's an extra body in the CCTV's blind spot. She pays an exact change you won't remember counting. She walks past without a sound you can place. No heels, no rubber soles, just a cool pressure in the aisle, as if the bus itself exhales to let her pass. She always chooses the last row, window side, where the glass sweats from the inside, even in December. If you glance in the mirror, you'll swear the seat is empty. If you turn around, you'll see a figure framed in fog, hair still dripping from a rain that hasn't touched the route in hours. The road bends. The engine labors. Somewhere behind you, a woman hums a lullaby that no one wants to recognize. And when the next stop's bell rings without a hand to pull it, the driver keeps going. You know she never gets off. Aaron was 26, a minibus driver who had just finished his late shift in North Point. Most nights he would grab a bowl of noodles, smoke a cheap cigarette, and take the tram home. But on this particular evening, he had lingered too long, and by the time he checked his watch, it was past midnight. The tram lines were closed, the streets thinning out. His only option to reach his rented room near Victoria Peak was the last number 15 bus. The depot was nearly deserted. Fluorescent lights flickered above the platform, moths circling the tubes. The double-decker loomed in the mist, its windows clouded, engine idling like a restless animal. Aaron paid his fare and climbed aboard. He was surprised to see more passengers than he expected for the hour, an old man with thick glasses reading a newspaper under the weak ceiling lamp, a young couple whispering to each other on the upper deck, and near the very back row, a solitary woman dressed in pale clothes. Her face turned toward the window. The setting itself felt uneasy. The road up to Victoria Peak was narrow and winding. A serpent's path coiled around the mountainside. By day, the route was filled with tourists marveling at the skyline. By night, fog swallowed everything, trees, guardrails, even the lights of the city below. The bus groaned with every turn, headlights cutting through vapor that seemed to cling stubbornly to the vehicle. Aaron settled halfway down the aisle, his eyelids heavy, but something in the atmosphere kept him awake. The old man's newspaper pages were blank. Or maybe the dim bulbs played tricks on his eyes. The young couple's voices faded into silence, though their lips still moved. And the woman in the back row never shifted, not even when the bus lurched over a pothole. He told himself it was exhaustion, the hallucinations of a long shift. Yet deep inside, he felt the ride was not going to end as simply as reaching the peak. Aaron leaned against the cool glass of the window, trying to shake off the fatigue. The bus rumbled up Garden Road, gears grinding as it began the steep ascent. The city lights below were already dissolving into a haze of fog, swallowed by the mountain. He told himself to relax. Just 30 minutes, and he'd be home. But something felt wrong. The air inside the bus was heavy, thicker than it should have been, as if the vehicle had slipped underwater. Aaron rubbed at his arms. The temperature had dropped so suddenly that he could see his own breath blooming faintly in the whispering on the upper deck had fallen eerily silent. From below, Aaron could see their silhouettes through the frosted glass partition. Their heads were tilted toward each other, but frozen, as though someone had pressed pause on a film. And then there was the woman. She sat in the last row, a pale figure blurred by the fogged window. At first, Aaron thought she was asleep. But as the bus jolted sharply around a hairpin turn, he caught the faintest sound, humming. A tune, repetitive and low, seeping into the cold air. It was a lullaby. Cantonese words carried gently, but with a dissonant undertone, like a music box left to wind down. His stomach tightened. He knew the melody. His grandmother used to sing it when he was a boy, a song about a child who wandered into the night and never returned. He turned his head quickly, hoping to catch her lips moving, but her profile remained still, face obscured by strands of long dark hair. Yet the humming continued, louder now, as if it came from the very walls of the bus. The driver shifted uneasily in his seat, tapping the wheel. Aaron noticed him glance repeatedly at the rearview mirror. Each time, his brow furrowed. Finally, Aaron risked a look himself, just a quick glance upward. The mirror reflected the aisle, row after row of faded upholstery. The old man was there, the couple's silhouettes, faintly visible upstairs, but the last row was empty. Aaron's breath caught. He whipped his head around, staring at the back of the bus. The woman was still there. Pale clothes, long hair, face to the window, but in the mirror, nothing. His pulse hammered in his throat. He told himself it was exhaustion, that he was imagining things that mirrors sometimes warped in dim light. Yet the air around him felt tighter, the humming pressing closer to his ears. He shut his eyes, willing himself not to listen, but the lullaby wrapped around him like a cold hand on his chest. The bus lurched again, climbing higher. A faint chime rang, a bell for the next stop. Aaron jerked upright. No one had moved. No hand had pulled the cord. The driver's jaw tightened, and without slowing, he pressed harder on the accelerator. The bus did not stop. Aaron's knuckles turned white as he gripped the seat in front of him. Something was very wrong on this bus. And though he wanted to tell himself he was only imagining it, the evidence mounted with every turn of the road. The road coiled higher into the mountain, sharp turns forcing the bus to lean dangerously close to the edge. Beyond the fogged windows, Aaron could no longer see the city, only a vast emptiness. It was as though the bus had left Hong Kong altogether, climbing into some other place that wasn't on any map. He tried to steady his breathing, to focus on something ordinary, something real. But the ordinary had already begun to dissolve. The old man's newspaper had slipped to the floor, pages spread wide. They weren't blank anymore. Lines of text crawled across them, but the words twisted and reformed before his eyes. He blinked hard, leaned forward, and realized they were names. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. And each line ended with the same date, 1972. The old man didn't move, his face slack as if sleepwalking. Yet the paper rustled, another page turning itself, more names revealed. Aaron felt bile rise in his throat. He kicked at the page underfoot, but his shoe passed through it as though the paper were smoke. On the upper deck, the couple had vanished. Their seats were empty, though the condensation on the window still bore two faint outlines of human shapes pressed against the glass. The moisture slowly dripped, forming streaks that resembled claw marks. The humming behind him grew louder. Aaron turned his head slowly, terrified of what he might see. The woman was no longer sitting. She was standing at the back of the aisle, her face hidden behind a curtain of dark hair. Her clothes seemed to ripple like mist, pale fabric shifting though no wind touched the bus. He tried to call out, but his throat closed, his voice caught his chest. He looked desperately toward the driver. The man's hands gripped too tightly, knuckles bone white. His eyes flicked to the mirror again, and each time his lips moved in silent prayers. The bus groaned. Lights overhead flickered, sputtering between. Yellow and dead black. For a moment, the vehicle was plunged into darkness. When the bulbs flared back to life, Aaron gasped. The aisle was empty. The woman had vanished. He spun, scanning. Frantically. Seats empty. Windows dripping. Silence except for the grinding of the gears. Then he heard it. The lullaby, not behind him anymore, but at his ear. The words brushed his skin. Cold breath curling across his cheek. He jerked around. Nothing. Only the stale air and the faint odor of damp earth. Panic surged. He stumbled into the aisle, clutching the rail as the bus lurched. Around another curve, his eyes darted toward the stairwell leading to the upper deck. A whisper drifted down from above. Not the lullaby now, but words. Sit with us. He forced himself up the steps. Though unseen bodies had settled there, he stumbled back down, heart hammering. The driver caught his eye in the mirror for the first time, and Aaron saw sheer terror in the man's face. His lips mouthed one word without sound. Don't. Aaron spun, realizing what the driver meant. The woman was back, seated again in the last row, hands folded in her lap. Only now her head was tilted, directly toward him. Though her features remained obscured, he could feel her stare boring through the strands of hair, pinning him to the spot. The bus bell chimed again. No one moved. The road outside had disappeared completely. Through the glass, there was only white fog, endless and suffocating. Aaron gripped the seat in front of him, a desperate thought clawing through the panic. This was no longer just a ride up Victoria Peak. The bus itself had become something else, a vessel carrying him into a place he wasn't meant to return from. And the woman, the passenger who never got off, was waiting for him to realize it. Blurred black and white images surfaced faintly like watermarks. Faces of students, a teacher, all smiling for a group photo. He read the headline above them. Tragedy on Route 15, dozens dead in. Bus plunge. A cold numbness spread through him. He had heard whispers of it once, an old story his grandmother mentioned when warning him never to linger near Victoria Peak after midnight. In 1972, a late-night number 15 bus had lost control on the mountain road. The vehicle crashed through the guardrail, tumbling into the ravine below. Everyone aboard perished. Some bodies were never recovered, swallowed by fire and fog. The page dissolved into ash between his fingers. He stumbled back, gasping, eyes drawn to the back row. The woman hadn't moved, but her presence now pressed. Against him, undeniable. Pieces clicked together. She wasn't just a ghostly passenger. She was one of them. A survivor who hadn't truly survived. Or maybe she wasn't alone at all. The silence around him was heavy with others, the unseen crowd of that doomed ride. The driver muttered under his breath, voice shaking. They never got off. Every night they ride again. Aaron's chest constricted. His grandmother's lullaby echoed in his mind, not as comfort now, but as mourning. It wasn't a song to put children to sleep. It was a dirge sung for those who never came home. He dared to whisper, "Is that why you're here? You can't leave." The bus groaned in reply, metal strained as though remembering the crash. The bell chimed once more, though no one moved. Outside, the fog thickened, swirling shapes pressing against the glass. Faces emerged briefly, pale, distorted, watching with hollow eyes before vanishing back into the mist. Aaron understood the truth then. The last bus wasn't a simple route. It was a ritual, a repetition of the night of the crash. The woman in white was the marker, the signpost that the journey had shifted from the living world into memory, into haunting. And anyone unlucky enough to board might never get off again. He clutched the railing, mind reeling. He could still feel the lullaby wrapping around him, soft but relentless. The story was clear. But the question hung like a blade above him. Was he a witness, or was he about to become part of their endless passenger list? The bus howled around another turn, tires screeching as if protesting the road itself. Aaron's knuckles turned white against the railing. He forced himself to keep his eyes open, though every instinct screamed to shut them, to pretend none of this was real. But the humming had grown too close, too heavy. It no longer floated from the back row. It was inside, the very air vibrating in his chest. Slowly, Aaron turned. The woman was standing now. She was taller than he expected, her frame thin, shoulders bent forward as if carrying decades of weight. Her long hair fell in damp ropes, concealing her face. The pale fabric of her dress clung to her like mist, edges dissolving into nothing. She didn't walk. She glided, each step soundless as the aisle lights flickered above her. The driver let out a sharp gasp, slamming his foot on the accelerator. The bus roared forward, but the road outside no longer belonged to Hong Kong. Through the windows, Aaron saw nothing but a sheer expanse of fog, dense and endless, a void that swallowed sound and sight. The headlights cut only a few feet ahead before vanishing into blankness. The woman stopped halfway down the aisle. The lullaby ceased. Silence pressed down, heavier than the noise had been. Aaron's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to demand who she was, what she wanted. But when her head lifted, too ordinary, pale skin, eyes dark but lifeless, lips parted as if caught mid-breath. She looked like a person pulled out of time, preserved in sorrow. Yet her gaze held him like iron chains. She raised her hand. In her palm lay something small. 2 coins, tarnished and blackened, their edges eaten away by flame. The fare for a ride. Aaron's stomach lurched. He understood. She wasn't asking for passage. She was offering it. The driver cried out, voice trembling. "Don't take it. Once you do, you're one of them." But the bus jerked violently, throwing Aaron against the seat. The coins clattered to the floor, spinning in circles that rang far louder than metal should. The sound reverberated through the vehicle like a bell tolling the end of all things. Suddenly, the bus was no longer climbing. It was falling. Aaron was hurled sideways as gravity shifted, the aisle tilting into a steep descent. Windows exploded outward, glass vanishing into the fog. Screams erupted, but not from the driver, not from Aaron. From dozens of unseen throats, layered and endless, the cries of passengers reliving their last descent. Faces flashed in the fog outside, men, women, children, slammed against invisible walls, distorted in agony. The woman stood unmoved, dress billowing as if underwater. Her lips parted, and she began to hum again. Only now the lullaby was a dirge, louder, insistent, demanding Aaron to surrender, to fall with them into the abyss. He clawed his way toward the front, gripping seats that dissolved into ash under his hands. "Stop," he shouted, voice cracking. "I know who you are. I know what happened in 1972. The humming faltered. The woman tilted her head as if listening. "You're not forgotten," he gasped. "I remember you. I'll carry your story, but I won't join you." For a heartbeat, silence. Then her expression changed. Her lips curved, not into a smile, but into something softer, sadder, almost human. The bus shuddered. The descent slowed. Fog thinned at the edges. The screams dwindled to whispers, then to nothing. The woman stepped back, retreating toward the rear row. Her figure blurred, fading into the fabric of the bus itself. The coins on the floor blackened to dust, scattering like ashes in the wind. With a jolt, the vehicle steadied. The city lights of Hong Kong returned, twinkling below, The road reappeared, serpentine but real, and the bus crawled along as though nothing had happened. The driver's hands shook as he clung to the wheel. He muttered prayers under his breath, tears streaking down his face. Aaron collapsed into his seat, chest heaving, sweat and cold air soaking his skin. The back row was empty, but he knew it wasn't. Not truly. She was still there, riding, waiting. She always would be. The bus rolled on in silence, engine humming like a lullaby that refused to end. By the time it reached the terminus near Victoria Peak, the fog had thinned enough for Aaron to see dawn breaking. Faintly on the horizon, pink light bled into the clouds, fragile, unreal. The driver stopped the vehicle, but his hands wouldn't release the wheel. He sat frozen, whispering words Aaron couldn't. Here. Aaron staggered down the aisle, legs trembling, and stepped onto the empty street. Behind him, the bus doors hissed shut. He turned, expecting the vehicle to idle there, ordinary again. Just another machine beginning a new day. But the windows reflected nothing. No driver, no passengers, not even himself. Just rows of vacant seats stretching into endless white fog. Then the lights blinked and it was gone. The street was empty. Aaron stood alone at the edge of the peak, the city sprawling beneath like a sea of stars. His chest still carried the vibration of the lullaby, as though the melody had branded itself into his bones. He knew the truth. He hadn't escaped. He had been spared. For now, every night since, when the clock creeps toward midnight, he hears it. The faint chime of a bus bell, the whisper of tires on a mountain road, and the low, mournful hum of a woman's voice. He avoids the route, avoids the depot, but he knows the warning all too well. On Victoria Peak, there is always one last passenger, and she never gets off. Not every ghost lingers to terrify. Some remain because the world has forgotten them, their last moments sealed in silence. The woman on the bus was not only a specter of death, she was memory itself, replaying a tragedy the city chose to bury under new roads, new towers, new lights. The last bus to Victoria Peak is not just a ride. It is a ritual, a reminder that history cannot be erased by concrete and neon. The passengers of 1972 never reached their homes. Their cries were muffled by the mountain fog. Their names faded from headlines, and their faces dissolved into the mist of time. But every midnight, the wheels turn again, the lullaby hums, and the story insists on being told. Aaron realized what most people never dare to. The danger lies not in seeing the ghost, but in pretending it was never there. To look away, to dismiss the whispers, is to condemn those souls to ride forever, unseen and unheard. Perhaps that is the true curse of Hong Kong's dark. Secrets, not the spirits themselves, but the city's hunger to forget them. Because the moment the living stop remembering, the dead have no choice but to remind us. And so the last bus still runs, waiting for the next passenger who refuses to believe in ghosts until they become one.